Welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast, the podcast for those that are curious about what's possible inside their four walls. Before we get into this episode, let's hear a word from our sponsors that make this all possible. If you want visibility from the boardroom to the warehouse floor, then you need IFS Softion's WMS powered by Industrial AI. IFS Softion's WMS combines deep industry expertise, robotics orchestration, and proven warehouse execution in a single seamless platform. With more than 2 decades of experience and a 100% deployment success rate, IFS Softion helps you optimize fulfillment operations and solve your complex warehouse challenges. Learn more at www.softion.com. That's www.softion.com. Thank you to our sponsors, and now let's get to the podcast.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode here from MODEX 2026. As we're recording this, it is day 3, so we've had sufficient time to soak in some of the things happening in the first 2 days. And I am going to be joined by Christoph Buchmann, who is of iAutomate, and also Rueben Scriven of Interact Analysis. And if anybody has their pulse on robotics, automation, technology in the warehouse space, it is these two guys right here. So that is exactly what we're going to talk about here in this episode of the podcast. But before we get into that, Christoph, why don't you kick us off? Just tell us a little bit about iAutomate for people that are not familiar.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Thanks for having me on the show. iAutomate, we're a CPQ software platform, configure, price, quote. We want to give the industry access to data on various technologies to quickly size them out, price them out, to build a business case for potential new warehouse automation project quickly. So that's what we do. We offer that as a white label product, integrated solution providers. And that's our contribution to trying to match up those who need automation with those who can provide it.
Yes, absolutely. And great tool there. And Rueben, tell us a little bit about Interact Analysis.
Sure. So I'm Rueben Scriven, the research manager at Interact Analysis. Interact Analysis, we're a market research company focusing on supply chain automation. So robotics, warehouse automation, warehouse software, looking at things like how many warehouses are being built and kind of providing that transparency to the industry, which, for many decades it didn't have. So trying to provide, that insight into how the industry is developing.
Yes. And both of you, obviously, long history in this, right? And understanding of the industry. So maybe let's kick it off here and, tell us, Christoph, maybe like, what have you seen in the first 2 days here? Or I guess we're maybe like technically 2.5 days so far into MODEX. So what have you been hearing out there? What have you been seeing?
I've been seeing a lot of what we saw last year at the big shows and also at LogiMAT. So I haven't seen anything fundamentally new. So I think the big new tech releases kind of happened last year, and that's not surprising that not every year there's a whole new wave of new tech. But in talking to a lot of customers walking around here, I've been hearing a bit of a technology fatigue. So it's, okay, there's a lot of solutions out there. There's big advancements in technology and robotics, but it's a lot more of the same as well. So 3 years ago, there was one climbing robot. Now there's multiple of those.
Sure.
And then that's not necessarily negative, but what it leads to is, from the customer's perspective, they were saying they're focusing on selling us on their tech versus what really matters from an operational point of view is uptime. How reliable is that system? And am I going to meet my KPIs that I'm promising my stakeholders, which is usually reduced cost per picked line, space savings, those things, reasons you'd invest in automation in the first place. So since that's really the driving factor behind why you would invest in automation to start with, having fancier, shinier, cooler tech isn't necessarily really meeting their needs. It's cool, it's nice, but if the shuttle can fly or not at the end of the day, it doesn't matter as much as does it work reliably? Is it going to do or am I going to deliver on the KPIs I'm signing up for at the end of the day? So that's kind of, I summed that up in technology fatigue a little bit. It's exciting. There are great technologies out there, but I think we're reaching a point of over-engineering them, losing focus of what matters on an operational level.
Interesting. And were there flying shuttles out there?
Not yet. I'm still waiting.
I mean, I saw drones, definitely, but no flying shuttles, right?
No, not yet. We're getting there, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Absolutely, definitely. And I'm curious, Ruben, I mean, does that kind of line up with what you're seeing in some of the analysis and the reports that you do?
It is, yes. I mean, there are several things that we've seen over the last couple of weeks at MODEX and LogiMAT. One of the big things here at MODEX is AI is everywhere, right? And that's no different to any previous years. AI's been on every single stand for the last 3-4 years. But I think what's been slightly different this time around is that there are some more functional use cases. But these use cases seem to be very basic. And I think to Christoph's point around technology fatigue, I think part of that is around actually understanding the technology. With so many developments, it's difficult to understand where these technologies fit. So the way we think about AI is kind of bucketing it into 4 main categories. One is vision and inspection. There seems to be a lot of use cases at the show around vision and inspection. This seems to be the main category right now that's gaining traction. The other is execution and optimization. So taking various workflows, optimizing that based on machine learning. Then we've got natural language. So interacting with systems using natural language. And then finally, physical AI. So humanoids, I mean, we've actually only seen 2 or 3 here, far fewer than we were expecting. But that kind of use case of AI in the physical world. So those kind of 4 categories are what we're seeing. And I think to Christoph's point around fatigue, I think it's partly fatigue, partly educational in the sense that where do you kind of conceptually, cognitively map these different AIs into an understanding of a warehouse space which customers think about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm curious both your thoughts on this, because I thought there was, you mentioned the humanoid aspect, right? But I thought there was like noticeably less humanoid buzz this year, right?
I agree.
What do you think? Yeah,
I think comparing to last year, ProMat, definitely, there's far less. I think last year that was, everyone realized there was a lot of it. You could see a lot of it stands in the shows on the floor, but this year I actually haven't seen a single one yet. So.
No, it's interesting. We do a lot of research in the humanoid space. We're just about to publish a report looking at this. Fundamentally, one of the main barriers to adoption is safety regulations. There aren't regulations available yet, and those that are in development, still not published yet. And, the marketing videos we see of these humanoids jumping, running, dancing, and all the, the fail videos of them walking and crashing out into people and wrestling and falling over.
Hilarious.
Any insurance company, it's hilarious. But like any insurance company that sees that, is going to say, I'm going to stay the heck away from these robots because I don't want to be responsible if they fall over and hit someone in the head. So I think safety and regulation are the companies that are that I think will be really successful here are the ones that are driving for certification, driving for regulations. There are a number of companies here, Agility, for example, they are really, really laser focused on safety. And companies that are really focused on safety are the ones that are going to crack this space.
I'd add to that. I think spot on. The humanoid, the use cases we're seeing, the marketing videos, these are perfect examples of a totally controlled environment where this could work.
Right.
But it differs strongly from the real life application where you're actually trying to sell it into. And I think end users are seeing that disconnect. It's okay, of course, in a perfectly controlled environment, I could see that humanoid picking cases out of the trailer. That's not what my warehouse looks like. And I think until they see a more realistic approach to the real world, I don't think we're going to see much adoption yet.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because there was certainly, I guess it was about 2 years ago, maybe when Agility first like kind of exhibited, and then was like a huge amount of buzz, and I remember even last year, like, opening my LinkedIn feed, right, like during MODEX, like, oh, so everybody's like posting about humanoid. I'm like, I haven't seen like one post about a humanoid like this week, which I think is like very, very fascinating. But I'm curious on the, on the fully autonomous side, right? Like, we just telling you guys, we just recorded with Locust, right? Checking out the Locust array. What do you think, about that type of solution? Do you think we're going to see more of that in contrast to the humanoid? And is that form factor like a little more viable, the wheeled, I guess, form factor of fully autonomous?
So here's what I've been observing. Looking at, remember when the trend was going a bit away from fully autonomous more to collaboration?
Sure, yeah.
Robots, humans, all together in the same space. That has largely not prevailed because it gets extremely complex from a safety point of view, which immediately impacts productivity and performance. So I think what I've been seeing and hearing, a lot of facilities that had an approach to collaboration between robots, be that AMRs or humanoids and humans, they're actually shying away from that again because the results were ultimately actually not at all what they thought they would be. So I think going fully autonomous, there's a lot of value in that if you can create an environment where you can enable that. That's not always possible for every operator to dedicate space to a fully autonomous operation. But if you can, that's when I think automation can really deliver on all the impacts it can have in a truly autonomous environment. So I see a lot of upside there.
Yeah, interesting. Rueben?
I think in general, this idea of lights out warehouses, I think it's a slight misnomer because I think what we're seeing, I mean, take an ASRS, right? Pallet ASRS, that is an autonomous system in that subsystem, right? Everything that happens inside the ASRS is autonomous, but then it interacts outside in the upstream and downstream workflows that might be manual. And I think what we're getting to a point where systems and their scope is increasing. So take Exotech, right, as an example, and Locus Array as well.
Yeah.
With those systems, historically, you would have just had the storage function, and they're expanding into effectively buffering, into packing, all part of that one subsystem. So you can imagine a warehouse as many different subsystems, whether they're manual or automated. They're fundamentally different parts of the warehouse that are interacting with each other. And I think what we're seeing is a point where these black boxes, these islands of automation, their scope is expanding, and what's then remaining outside of those might still be manual, but the scope of these black boxes is effectively kind of getting bigger.
Yeah, interesting, and I think it's interesting to see kind of the evolution of this too, as well, for that fully autonomous or the approach to it, or kind of these subsystems within the whole system, I guess, as you're describing there, Rueben. So tell us a little bit, Rueben, because you all survey actual operators, right, to see what is actually on their minds, right, not just what the companies out here are telling us what's on everybody's mind, right? So tell us a little bit about, that approach and kind of what some of the findings are from that recently.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we've just published the first release of our voice of market research, which is, like you say, surveying operators and then interviewing them to try and corroborate some of these findings. And when we surveyed about 400 operators, we got some really interesting insights. So one of the first ones, one of the questions we asked was, what is the main barrier to adopting automation? And we thought it might be something in relation to uncertainty, cost, budget, the normal things that spring up to mind.
Yeah.
In fact, it was integration complexity. It was how complex it is to integrate these subsystems. That was the number one barrier to automation. Another interesting finding was we asked what is the next technology you're going to be investing in? Again, we thought it might be something in relation to robotics, AMRs. That scored pretty highly, but what came up first was vision inspection technologies. So I think what this survey has showed us is there is actually some differing viewpoints that goes against the collective understanding that vendors often sort of think themselves. And there's actually a slightly different narrative taking place in the operators' lives.
Interesting. Yeah. And it's interesting to hear vision inspection like as the number one, right?
Yeah.
Which I think
I'm pretty surprised to find that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty interesting. And we've certainly seen like a rise, right, in the computer vision, machine vision, startups and applications that are coming out there. And I think, I guess from my view, when you tell me that, I think about it, I'm kind of like, well, it's a little more of like an accessible technology, right? A little easier to implement, right? And obviously we see some of the startups or vendors out there that are utilizing like existing cameras already to be able to do some of that stuff. So very interesting there. And Christoph, what are you hearing on your side from like, your customers that you talk to? Because, some of that integration complexity that Rueben mentioned, I mean, that's somewhat kind of like what you try to help to navigate through iAutomate, right?
Yeah, I think it totally resonates with what I'm hearing too. So the integration complexity, I think, is the biggest fear. It's also, it's not so much which technology you select. It's really the fear of what are the problems going to be during integration, deployment, and all that. And then kind of back to the technology fatigue, the more complex the solution looks, I mean, cooler the tech is and everything, the more the customer is actually going to worry about how is this going to go down during implementation, go live testing? What if it fails, this and that? On the vision side, I totally agree that I think customers nowadays, so you've probably seen hundreds of articulating robot arms that can pick products,
Right?
right? And I think at LogiMAT, we saw a lot more of that than in other years. But customers now know they can pick 80%, maybe 90% of the products, but they really care about the 10% that they can't pick, because until we get there, there's no real, the business case isn't as strong as it could be, because those remaining 10% might be 20% of the volume. So I think that's where customers are now learning. If the vision systems are advancing, then maybe we can get to that 95, 96, 97, 98%. And then deploying a robotic picking arm might be a much easier decision. So I definitely think the focus is on the vision systems, and we're seeing advancements there. But integration complexity, all the customers I've talked to, they said, we're pretty sure the technology we're seeing works. It's the whole integration, our software, ERP, WMS, WES, and
Sure.
and then the fluctuations of a real live operation. So you design it against historic data. That's all you can do. But if your business changes due to acquisition, or your business model changes, your business profile, your SKU profile, how resilient is that system to cope with that? So that's something else I've been hearing more, like the forward thinking, how the next 5 years going to look with this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is interesting because you mentioned kind of the, WMS and the WES, WCS, and then the actual, hard technology to itself. And like, how do we bring that all together? And, I mean, just you saying it sounds a little daunting in itself, right? So I mean, I think that is, sometimes it's like, all right, well, this is a very big project, right? To do this, and like, do we want to do this right now? And I think also too, I'm curious, what you both see on this front. Like, do you see that anybody is potentially like delaying decisions because we're seeing, obviously, fast kind of iteration, right? Especially with like AI and being able to bring like newer updates or newer functionalities like pretty rapidly. So I'm curious if you hear anybody that's like, they're kind of like, oh, I want to do something, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do something. And then like next year, there's going to be something that actually would have been better for me.
One of the things that we hear, again, going at the voice of market, we try and understand what customers are looking for and what they want. And I think one of this resonates really with what you're saying, which is the need for scalability. So scalability has become such an important factor, not least because of how uncertain everything is in the world.
Sure.
You're not going to know what your business is going to look like in 3 or 4 years' time. So you need a solution that can grow and morph and adapt to whatever your operating conditions are in 3 or 4 years. But this also, I guess, aligns to your point about how technologies are developing. You want a solution where if there's a new product that is launched, it can scale into your operation seamlessly. Like over-the-air updates with Teslas as an example. You want something which can grow and morph and change and adapt as the technology evolves and your operations develop as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Christoph?
I was thinking in terms of delay, it's not so much that I see delays, kind of what Ruben was saying. Companies are going ahead, investing in automation for the sake of doing it, not just pausing and delaying this decision. But what I am seeing, trying to keep my tabs a bit on the projects that I'm aware of and what technologies might be selected. After examining and looking at many different technologies, they actually end up going to the initial easier choices. And I don't want to promote one technology over the other, but I see a lot of customers who, after entertaining 5 different technologies, go back to an auto store because it just works. It's risk mitigation. They know it's been deployed 1,000 times, and
proven.
It's proven. They're not as much as they like the tech they're seeing. They don't want to take that risk, and whether that's a perceived risk or not, it doesn't matter. But I am seeing, after an evaluation of many different technologies, that all probably had a really good sweet spot and a nice they fit the operation possibly. Sometimes they revert back to what has just been proven many times. So that was interesting to me to see that as well. I think it's interesting, like, because you mentioned the risk, right, potentially, and actually interviewed Andy from Geodis this morning and asked him that question, like, how does he look at that? Because there's so many startups now too. It's like, all right, well, so like someone's got to roll the dice on the startup, right? But like, how do you say like, okay, I am going to take a risk or not take a risk? And I think there's probably a lot of that going on just because there is so many new startups or just like new offerings coming to the market, right? And obviously, there's some demand for these things that's creating like these creations, right? But it is kind of like, all right, like, am I putting my operation like on the line here by doing this, or should I just play it safe to go forward? Yeah, I think it goes beyond that. It's not just, am I is it going to be dangerous for the operation moving forward? Is this going to cause chaos that's just going to be expensive? It's also the decision makers are putting their names on the line. Like this can have career impacting consequences.
I mean, some of this stuff is costs a lot of money, right? If
you compound all of this, it's natural to understand why a risk mitigation position would be the easier choice. Or I know if I were AutoStore, I mean, you've probably heard this. No one's ever been fired for buying an AutoStore.
Yeah.
If I were in their marketing team, I'd use that slogan all day long. But it's a very powerful statement. So I think while I like seeing customers, companies investing in new tech, I totally understand the position of we've seen it all. We evaluated lots of solutions. 3 of them were fantastic, but we went with the lower risk option.
Yeah.
So risk is definitely a big factor in these decisions.
Interesting. Ruben, have you heard anything like that in the voice of the operator?
Yeah, I think reliability is fundamentally probably the most important factor.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's going to operate is critical. And that fundamentally kind of trumps most other things when it comes to selecting any kind of vendor. Reliability comes in many different forms. Is it the SLA as part of the solution? Is it the speed at which some kind of request will come back? Is it just purely uptime? So yeah, I think reliability certainly trumps most other factors. Whether or not that sort of dictates whether you work with a startup, I definitely kind of foresee that to a certain extent. I think since Covariant was acquired by Amazon, I think there's been a bit of a, I guess, pseudo-acquired, been a bit of a fear of startups being taken away. I guess the kind of Kiva alarm bells are kind of ringing again a little bit.
Sure, yeah. That's a very fascinating story. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that might play into it slightly. I don't think that's the main thing. I don't think companies are going to not select a company based on them being a startup, but I think they place a much bigger onus on them to prove that they're going to be a going concern. And they'll need a lot more convincing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you also agree it's not just the tech of a startup, it's the long-term partnership, finding the right partner. So I think the expectation is the technology has to work either way if I'm investing in it. But who's the right partner and how can I find the right partner for this long-term engagement? So maybe that's where startups struggle because they don't have that story of years of support I can show you. Right.
Right.
And I think that goes into one observation that we've had. If you look at the most successful startups over the last 10 years, you've got Exotech, you've got Symbotic, you've got Locus. All of these were founded by individuals who were involved in logistics automation, but on the buyer side. And they saw a problem based on their existing technology investments and wanted to create a solution for that. So they all knew the industry extremely well before going into it. And I think that experience in logistics and automation, but from a buyer side, I think negates some of the risk associated with new startups where you might just, I've had a founder from Silicon Valley and saw a niche and got loads of funding and tried to create a solution around a problem they didn't quite understand fully.
Yeah. Yeah. I had that conversation actually last night with somebody where, I was saying like, it just seems like there's so many startups, but they don't have like the operational understanding. Like they don't have that experience. And I think it's super interesting. It makes the industry very cool that we're seeing all this technology come in, but there is a lot of gaps I see in some of these startups as well where, it's like, all right, well, we saw the opportunity. We had some technology that we came up with somewhere in a lab, right? And it's like, oh, well, we found like maybe a commercialization use case in logistics, right? But
that's it.
But we've never been in there. Yeah.
It's a technology first approach. It's here's my technology. What's your problem?
Right.
And not the other way around. So we see that, which is, like you just said, it's nice to see all that tech in the industry, but how many use cases are there really for?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it's really interesting to see that. But startups, like I advise you to get somebody from operations world, I'll say directly to you. But and I think when we look at that, and you both were at LogiMAT, right, a couple of weeks ago. So tell us a little bit about like what were some of the takeaways from there? Were there differences between what you're seeing here at MODEX or seeing some of the same? What was the feeling there?
I think in general, the trends are similar. More AI here. I think in Europe, there is a bit of a hesitancy towards branding with AI. I think especially in Germany and Central Europe, I think they're very kind of conservative when it comes to IT and don't like to throw terms like AI around.
Yeah. Is that because there's more concern about data privacy and stuff like that? Is that one of the reasons?
Potentially. I'm sure that comes into one of the reasons, but I think it's more just, even the term WES, I hate that.
Really?
You don't use WES that much in Europe because it's a new flashy terminology. In Germany, it's just WMS rather. You got your WCS, then you got the automation. It seems to be a bit more conservative in terms of the definitions. I think one thing that we saw that was very interesting. We went there and we do a lot of research at these shows, and we spoke to a bunch of companies and we asked them, what's your perception of the US-Iran war in relation to your customers? So buyers of automation, is that affecting their investments? They're waiting for a more stable time, and vast majority of them said, our customers aren't thinking about that at all. And I think that the takeaway for us is that the current craziness in the economy, all of the uncertainty is almost vaccinated against uncertainty. Customers aren't necessarily saying, I'm going to wait until a more stable time. They're saying, well, everything's uncertain, so we're just going to go ahead. And actually, in some cases, some companies are using this as a competitive advantage. How can we be resilient to uncertainty? So that was one. And I think the other kind of big takeaway or an interesting trend was in relation to kind of the articulated robots. To your point, this isn't anything new. Articulated robots have been around for ages and are omnipresent in every single booth at LogiMAT and MODEX. Sure. But this year, they seem to be a bit more integrated. And one of the main barriers for these robotic picking systems was the integration place. You get coming back to that point earlier, trying to integrate a robotic picking system to where a manual kind of picker might have been before. That's kind of, it seems almost like an afterthought in some cases. Whereas now we're seeing these robotic picking systems really, really tightly integrated and embedded into the system itself. I mean, take the locus array with the robot arm on the mobile robot. You've got Bright Pick where the arm is in the grid, same with the Cardo. AutoStore with their Versa AI that's like really, really tightly natively integrated into the system. I think this is the next iteration with robotic picking, is this very, very tight coupling of the robot manipulation with the architecture of the system. And that was kind of a bit of a change from what we've seen in the past as well.
Yeah, interesting, and interesting to hear about the uncertainty too, because I think it is. I mean, I think it's been so uncertain for so long now, right? That it's kind of like, all right, uncertainty is like the norm almost. So we just kind of like need to push forward, right, and keep going. Yeah. So, Christoph, what about you? What were your findings out there?
Yeah, I totally agree with Ruben. For me, it's interesting. I think it's cultural too, and I am German, so I immediately see this. There's less fluff, there's less BS.
So, do you not like WES?
I kind of like both because I've been living here the last 11 years, but I'm European.
You've been Americanized a little bit.
So I can appreciate both worlds, but definitely there's the show is far more pragmatic. Get to the point. Don't run around just with sales slogans and propaganda. It's people see through that very quickly. They want to see facts. They want to see data. So it's much more fact-based. Again, just a lot more pragmatic. And that's why I think you see less fluff. You hear AI maybe a bit less. Because if it doesn't exist, you're not going to see a German showcasing it, right?
Yeah.
Only unless it really works, they're going to show it. So that part to me is just funny to see from a cultural point of view. At the same time, I had the impression that the overall atmosphere was good. It's like investments are on the horizon again. And the German economy, I think for a while now, has been struggling a bit and everyone's waiting for them to get moving again. But it did sound like investments are on the horizon again. This whole post-COVID chaos hangover has largely been untangled and companies have strategies moving forward. And so that was my impression and my takeaway. But both shows, there's a lot of people. It seems like there's a lot of excitement and interest in warehouse automation. So excited to see the next big projects we'll hear of in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely, and very interesting to hear kind of both sides of it from the LogiMAT perspective and then also the MODEX perspective from you both here. I know myself, I haven't made it to LogiMAT yet. I got it on my list though. Definitely, I hear.
We'll invite you next year. You go
I mean, it's much bigger. It's bigger than MODEX, right?
I think more people in total, maybe more vendors.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So great to get you both on here and great to have you come sit down in our booth and give us kind of all your insights on what you're seeing out there and what you're hearing as well. And Ruben, if people want to access some of those reports or get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, sure. If you go to interactanalysis.com, we've got all of the insights that we publish freely on our website, as well as the research that we publish, or you can reach out to myself. You can find me on LinkedIn and drop me a message and we can kind of walk through some of the findings that we're seeing.
All right. Fantastic. And Christoph, how do people get in touch or learn more about iAutomate?
Same way, LinkedIn's a great channel of communication. Always happy to engage, or iAutomate.app, APP. It's where they can find our website and learn more about our software. And if you do make it to Stuttgart next year, I'll invite you to a German beer garden.
Oh, okay. I'm up for that. Yeah. As long as Ruben's going too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Every time.
I'd assume he's there. Yeah.
Oh, every time. Okay. All right. Okay. Fantastic. Well, great to get you both here. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes. So definitely connect with both of these guys. They know what they're talking about and they have their finger on the pulse of the industry. So thank you once again for your time today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.